And welcome back to Ouellette at Large, gone global on QCE News, Media, and NPTS TV 23. Our second segment will be on Common Core. This is our third show on Common Core. It is very important that our kids get educated the right way. It is just as important that we educate the parents. So we're going to talk about Common Core, and we have a guest. Her name is Dr.
Sandra Stotski.
And she's on the phone with us now. So why don't we go to Ann? Ann, how did you get involved in Common Core?
Well, I'm with Cornerstone Action in New Hampshire. We're a family policy group, and I am the education liaison, and I've researched education for many, many years. And so when national standards came about, it was something that I knew was coming down the pike, and I was very concerned about it. And then when they released them, I could see that we had big problems. And I think that that's been debated a lot in Manchester, which has been great. And I think that Manchester parents and what we thought the school board was behind an effort to make substantial improvements. And unfortunately, I think what we've gotten in Manchester and was what we're seeing in some, going on in some other states, and that is a rebranding of Common Core, maybe making some slight adjustments, some technical changes to it, and then calling it local standards. Or in the case of Indiana did the same thing. They came up with new standards, but they pretty much mirror Common Core. And so they're kind of going through this process, spending a lot of taxpayer dollars, and what you're getting is not exactly what the people wanted. So you know, when they decided to redo this, I got involved, and at the request of many Manchester parents, and we kind of worked together, and we thought that the school is working with the parents and working to make a substantial improvement, and it doesn't appear as if that's what's been done. And Dr. Stotski offered her services pro bono along with Dr. Milgram, and these are the two nation's experts on standards. And the biggest failure, I think, in the district was not getting their stamp of approval on what they've developed.
And they were doing it pro bono.
Yes.
And the city spent so far almost $140,000 on this. $80,000 for a consultant last summer, and
wow.
And almost $40,000 now on this, and 2,000 hours of teachers. And when you compare the state's Common Core standards to our Common Core standards, the only thing I find, have you seen both?
I have looked at a number of state standards, including what Manchester has offered up. But you know, I will tell you that I'm not a standards expert. What you had at your fingertips in Manchester were the nation's top experts. You had Dr. Stotski and Dr. Milgram. If you cannot follow through on a task like this and have these two individuals help you through this process and come out with a stellar product that is a direct failure of your school administrators, and that needs to be the topic of discussion. And if your school board accepts this document without their approval, they are failing the students and parents in this district. Make no mistake about it.
Now, what I found, and then we'll go to our guests on the phone, is that when I compared the both, I found that in some of the standards, the difference was only they changed a few words, but if you look at the definition, it means the same thing.
Exactly.
So are they trying to put us in a corner and confuse us or trick us? That's what I have to wonder. Now, I don't know if the doctor knows, but on this past Monday when they had a special board meeting, the mayor entertained a motion. It was seconded and passed, that they're going to drop the word dropout, and they're going to replace it with non-completers. But the state law requires that we use the word dropout. And you know why? Because they are dropouts. Now, the mayor also did say, and we'll air this later, made a statement that he wasn't quite sure if we, meaning the school system, had failed these children or if we allowed them to fail themselves. My response is, whichever it is, we have failed our children. It's automatic. There's no question to be asked. Why are they even deferring which one it is? We need to find a better way to make sure that we don't fail them. There should be no dropouts. And in New Hampshire now, a couple of years ago, we passed a law. You used to be able to sign, your parents could sign you out of school up to 16. Now the law is you have to be in school until you're 18 unless you graduated from high school. So how do they plan to get away with it? So, doctor, this is where you come in. You offered your services.
here.
You offered your services free to the school system, and you met a couple of times with them, I believe, right?
Yes, I came twice to Manchester. First day I came sometime in March. I spent most of the morning with the high school group of teachers. The second time I came in the middle of April, I spent time with a middle school group and an elementary school group. And then I kept asking for a complete version to look at if the school board and Ryan and the superintendent wanted my review or critique of the whole document. I wasn't going to review bits and pieces, some of which weren't even done or complete. I wanted one complete document in one place, and there had to be some way to indicate which standards were the floor, the Common Core floor, and which standards were above the floor, because that was indeed what the board had voted for. I had checked that out with Mayor Gatsis, and I had checked that with David Ryan and Superintendent Livingston right at the beginning. I wanted to know what was the charge to the committee. That's what you begin with. And the Manchester School Board had voted for a good set of standards, the best in the country, something like that, using Common Core as a floor. Okay, so show where the floor is and then show what's on the floor. And we never got past the floor. I couldn't even get any indication of what the floor was because it looked just like Common Core, and I never got a complete document to look at. And I said I would come if the school board would invite me, if the mayor would invite me. I have sent a short note to all members of the school board. They know what I had asked for. Those were the two very reasonable conditions. You want a review? Send me a complete document. Number two, you show me what's above the floor and where's the floor, because that was the charge to the committee. And I haven't heard from one single member. They could have invited me to come. I'm only in the Boston area. I can easily drive up to Manchester for any meeting they have and explain any review I might provide if I could see the entire document. If it isn't finished, then they shouldn't be voting on it.
That's correct. In fact, it is not finished because the document is still being called a work in progress, a living document. It's been going on since October of last year. They've added so far 256 pages. And when the document is completed, you would think to present to the public that they will have the standards. And if you want to have more details, then you can read the whole document. But for us to have to read the entire 256 pages is very demanding for parents and confusing.
And it's ridiculous because the standards don't take up that much room, even in Common Core's own document. So they don't need the other pages there, but they do need to show what the standards are, because that was what the charge to the committee was. And by the way, they didn't need to spend more than 2 weeks on this sort of thing. This is what's happening all over the country. People are saying, oh, you need 2 years to develop standards. No, you can start with a set of first-rate standards, and they did know what the old Massachusetts standards looked like. They had a copy to refer to, and they had my 2013 compressed, shortened version. They could have begun with that and then tailored it to New Hampshire and to Manchester, whatever they wanted. But they could have started with a different footprint or blueprint. They didn't. They basically started with Common Core and fiddled around a little differently than the Governor Pence appointed folks in Indiana did. They came up with a worse document than what they had. We don't know what Manchester's going to come up with. It may rival the very bad standards in Indiana, which turned out to be among the worst in the country by the time the two appointed committees got through.
You know,
if the school board is willing to approve them, then it's the school board's fault, including the mayor who chairs the school board.
that is correct. It's their responsibility. I guess they'd rather pay hundreds of thousands of dollars and not getting it done the way it should be done and getting their way. I do know that there are 2 Board of Education board members from New Hampshire, the New Hampshire State Board of Education, that states to this day that Manchester's new Common Core, new standards are Common Core. When they state that, that means they did not did what they were focused to do.
That's right.
And how can the
That's
mayor...
right. So if they're admitting it on the state board level, then that means you haven't done anything except spend a lot of taxpayer money. I think it would be useful, unless you already have it, to find out what reports were presented by these consultants that they paid, whatever, $40,000, $60,000 for. I mean, who are these consultants that they paid money for? I'm willing to do it pro bono. Professor Milgram was willing to look at the math pro bono. Who was this math expert that gave them very pricey comments? And who was this English language arts expert that gave them very pricey comments? Do we know what those comments look like? Has anyone looked to see whether these people even know what they're talking about?
Very good point. I do know that there is a very important meeting on Monday, August the 13th.
August 11th.
August 11th. August 11th at 7 p.m. at City Hall on the 3rd floor in the chambers. And the school board will be taking up and addressing to the full board from their committee the new Manchester academic standards. But the academic standards are not 256 pages. So we're asking the public to show up, especially parents who are concerned about the education of their students, of their children, and come speak your 3 minutes and tell your school board members what you think of Common Core and what kind of education you want your students to have.
Better yet, I think they should start coming with recall petitions, because if they have irresponsible people on their school board who don't have enough sense to say, we want to see a complete document before we vote on it, and we want to see which standards are above the floor and which standards are the floor, if you don't have people with enough sense to say that to their own hired help in the schools, that's the superintendent on down, then the parents should come with recall petitions and start a movement to get rid of them. I mean, that's what recall petitions are all about. That was a progressive reform from the beginning of the 20th century that started in the western states. Initiative petitions, recall petitions, get rid of incompetent people. Let's start using that means again when you have this kind of nonsense going on. Why have a meeting when the document isn't even finished?
You know, Doctor, that they held 2 public hearings in the last 2 weeks, one at Memorial High School and one at West High School, and both of them, they did not give a presentation on the standards that they're supposed to be proposing. They did not allow us to ask questions. We were only allowed to do public participation. Now, public participation in the dictionary versus public hearings are totally different. And when they ended the meeting, one school member at the West High School said, "Oh, you can all stay and we'll answer your questions." And 10 of us said no. And they said, "Why?" Because it's supposed to be a public meeting.
Right.
If you adjourn the meeting, we want the public to know what you're going to tell us. So what do they have to hide? Common Core.
Exactly. And
well, that is why I think a recall petition
Yes.
movement is where you start to show dissatisfaction with irresponsible or incompetent school board members. It's got to start somewhere.
Right. And some of these school board members ran opposing Common Core.
That's right.
And seemed to be shifting and saying, you know what, we're just going to accept this. You know, where are the critical thinkers on your school board? You know, they had a presentation. I attended the presentation. I sat there and I listened to the presentation. And I have to tell you, the questions that were going through my mind, I didn't hear come from some of the school board members. I mean, and I understand that, you know, that the teachers were involved, but one of the things that stood out to me during that presentation was that you had the Common Core test prep consultant
Yes.
in on this standards preparation.
Should not have happened.
If that is not a cry out to to the people in your district that these standards were developed with the test prep consultant, more teaching to the test, more concern about what's going to be on this test that has not been validated. This test that is going to be put into your schools has not been validated yet.
Ann, when a company calls you on the phone and asks if you want to take part in a 6-week survey and you say yes, they pay you something, a voucher of $100 or whatever, for taking part. Do you know, people, that for the next 2 years they're going to be testing these tests? Our kids will be the guinea pigs. And guess what? They're not paying the school system to do those tests. We're paying them to use our kids as guinea pigs, and there's no guarantee that these standards work because nobody's tried them out yet.
Right. And there's an
That's
interesting.
Right. And so, where are the pro bono lawyers who live in the Manchester area? Where are the legislators to start filing lawsuits against irresponsible public officials? You've got to move forward. There's no point in constantly berating these people who are irresponsible and incompetent. They're trying to pass a document that isn't complete, and they didn't hold a legitimate public meeting on it. Something has got to move forward. You get rid of these officials, you have a new election if you need it, or you take kids out of school. You have to have a lawsuit and have a judge issue an injunction that the testing can't take place unless the parents know what's going to happen to their children by legitimate instruments.
Well,
somebody has to start moving forward on a way to stop this nonsense.
That is correct.
Yes.
Now, next year, next September is a primary, and next November is a general election for all city elected officials, including the school board. So they should be reminded, and we should be attending that meeting on Monday at 7 o'clock at City Hall on the 3rd floor. There is an elevator for those who can't walk up the stairs, and give our 3 minutes on what we think of Common Core. It's not the best education. I don't understand why, if I say, Ann, 2 and 2 are 4. Oh, don't give me an answer yet. Add 2 is 6, minus 2 is what? And Ann, you say, but teacher, 2 and 2 is 4, so why did you go all the way around? And then she tells you, or he tells you, Ann, if you don't do it my way, even though you have the answer right, I'm going to flunk you.
Yes.
What kind of education is that? They want to make robots out of our kids. I always thought that in America, our forefathers made sure that towards education, that we were teaching to free minds. It's not a free mind if the answer. That's right. If the answer is right and they fail you, go ahead.
This is part of the issue. They're not teaching to free minds. They want to get conformists. Kids who will become part of a very docile, passive labor force, low level. As Professor Milgram has told me, we will have in the 21st century the best educated ditch diggers in the world.
That's right. This is about workforce training. This is not about educating.
From the very beginning.
That's why your private elite schools wouldn't touch this with the 10-foot pole. I mean, I've talked to admissions directors at private elite schools because I want to make sure, are they doing it? No. I hear from parents whose kids are in private schools. They want no part of this. But this is what's going to be thrusted upon your public school unless you say no. There is a blog post on Diane Ravage. If you Google Diane Ravage blog, you are going to read a post, I think it was posted today, and it's called Why the Pearson Tests Are a Setup for Failure for Your Kids. These are the Common Core tests. You better read that. These parents better realize that what is being done to their kids, they better take this bull by the horn, because your elected officials in your district seem to be dropping the ball right now, and your administrators seem to be dropping the ball right now. They were given a charge by the public, and they're failing. They are failing right now, and if you push them, then they're going to have to push back and get what you deserve in this school district. Why do you have to take your kids out and pay $28,000 for a private school education to get your kids well educated? There's no reason. There's no reason for it. I'm a math tutor. I've tutored math before, and I can tell you this math scares me. I mean, you're going to just basically push kids away from the math field when you're giving this kind of confusing math, because I see the kids in tears. I see the kids who call themselves, I can't do math. I'm not a math kid. Oh, yes, you can if it was taught properly and it was something you understand. Teaching math involves taking a difficult concept and making it easier. Under Common Core, Core, they're taking a difficult concept and making it more difficult. That's
Do-
what they've done, and they've been doing that in Manchester with Everyday Math. I've got
Do you
that.
know that we're going to watch a film in a minute, for 7 minutes, so I can have her respond to Ryan how he responded to her question, and that is this here is they've admitted that even though the school board 2 years ago voted no for Common Core, they have been ordering Common Core books, but that's okay. They said we have a new set of standards, and the part of the book that's too much Common Core, we'll just go away from that. What kind of education is that?
I know. It's a hodgepodge. It's a hodgepodge because, you know, one of the top teachers in the country, his name is Vern Williams, he has his parents look for old math textbooks on the internet to use in his class because he knows the old ones teach arithmetic where kids can understand it. He's an excellent teacher. That's what you should have in your school. Instead, you're going from everyday math, which is fuzzy math, didn't help your kids at all. Now you're going to go to Common Core math. And this idea that you're not using Common Core, show us exactly how it's not Common Core. That's what I think. That's a simple request, and that's what Dr. Stotski asked. And for some reason, it seems like your assistant superintendent Ryan does not want to provide that.
John, can you play the 7-minute video and make it loud enough in here so the doctor can hear it?
Also, I found out that yes, some of the classes have Common Core textbooks.
Yeah.
However, they are teaching the same subject matter that we would ordinarily be teaching, but they have a reference on pages for what standard is being referred to, which I was told is going to be a difficult problem because they've rewritten the standards. So while it would have been valuable if we had completely used the Common Core as is, it is not helpful now, but the book is still fine. What they're going to do is they're going to look at those standards, try and find them in the Manchester academic standards so that they can go back and forth between the textbooks that they have. And many of the schools already had textbooks before Common Core and didn't get new textbooks the year of Common Core. I don't know how much more to say. I think that the teachers have done a good job. I think Common Core was used as a floor. I think these are our standards. And whatever we end up using for testing, we end up using when that part comes. I'm excited to see the curriculum and so are the teachers. That, again, could be an area of a lot of questions, but when we get to it, we get to it. I'm ready to move.
All right, is there further discussion before we vote? Women Langley?
I would personally just like to see us hold off or table it till September. But a few things, some of the bullet points, I think if we could publicize that this is how it's different, this is how it's better, I think that would be important to have out there. I mean, there was that article in the Union Leader that said we were being evasive. I don't like hearing that from our community newspaper. I'd like them to know this is how we're different, this is how we're better. If we wait until September, we'll ensure that there could be more community input because by then everyone's back in town, everybody's here, the students are in school. And Mr. Ryan, is there any way that this woman, Sandra Stotski, who said she'll do this pro bono, is there any way for her to send her exactly where she can find the whole document? I'd just be interested in reading what she had to say, not that I know this woman or anything, but that could put to rest a lot of the questions out there in the community. I just like to make sure that the community wants to move forward with this and everyone's happy with what we're doing and it's in the best interest. I'm sure teachers are already tweaking their curriculums to do this. Common Core is setting the bar high and every teacher wants to do that. So I just want to make sure the community's on board and everyone understands where we're going and we've given ample time.
Can I answer a question?
You should.
Dr. Stotski was given the links and she's read through all of our documents. Not only does she work 2 full days with us in reviewing the documents and standards, as well as making recommendations. She's had email communication with me and she wanted the standards presented to her in a format that we were not prepared to assemble for her within a few short days. So it's not as though Dr. Stotski has not seen the standards. She has, and she's read them. As a matter of fact, I still have an email from her in which she describes our standards as elegant, the elegant framework of our standards. That was after her first day of working with us. So it's not so much that Dr. Stotski hasn't read our standards, it's that she didn't see them in a format in which she preferred. And we were not prepared to change the entire format for her vetting prior, I think it was just 3 or 4 days prior to presenting to the board. So that would be my response.
And then a follow-up, is there a table of contents so that the public knows where it is? Because that's useful items, instead of going through 256 pages. If there's certain points somebody wants to get to, the table of contents will tell them what page it's on rather than trying to peruse the whole document.
Both middle and high school English language arts have a table of contents, but right now they're separated by grade level and subject level. So if you wanted to look at grade 1 mathematics, and it's broken out also by strands, so grade 1 literacy, you click on that link and it shows you just those standards for grade 1 literacy. If you want to look at grade 1 writing, the same grade 6 English language, you click on that, it shows you just the English language. So everything is hyperlinked right now, so it's just a point and a click. The final document will have a full table of contents so that it's a bit more consistent in terms of reading progressions. So looking at in grade K, for math, you know what the standards were and how that translates into grade 1 and then grade 2. But until we have the approval to move forward with that, because Summerhead, we can't do that one.
But could we have that document and be sure that that's it and that's what we're voting on? Because right now I don't feel that we...
I believe we did discuss that at the last meeting and shared it with everybody that they could obtain them, because it's at 270 some odd pages, and to print that out for every person on the board or every member of the community was a bit much.
But is that the final, what you're saying, there's only a table of contents for English language arts, not for the math?
Everything's linked. I mean, and if I had the screen, I'd show you. I'm not certain if you've been to the site to see where the standards are listed, but they're listed on one page, and you just simply click whatever you want. Grade 5 math. Click it. It all is right there for you.
And welcome back. That's basically what happened, and then they voted. The committee voted to bring it to the full board on Monday, August 11th, which I'm asking parents who are concerned about education and Common Core to show up. Now, Doctor, I want to give you an opportunity to answer Ryan.
I was not able to hear clearly what he said there, but I've been told that he said, and you correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
that he has said that I attached unacceptable conditions, and that was why I could not do the review that he expected me to review. Is that correct, that he has accused me of attaching unacceptable conditions to my review? Now, that is a very silly charge, because it's on the record that I asked for 2 things to be done: a complete document with an indication of which standards were above the floor. Those are not unacceptable conditions. Those are quite reasonable demands by any reviewer. And how these paid reviewers ever did a review of an incomplete document, I think, should be the subject of an investigation.
I totally agree.
Ryan's accusation is totally off the wall.
I totally agree, Doctor. That's exactly what he said. He also admitted that there was no short document, that it was still breathing and still growing already at 256 pages. And the school board committee member, Langton, was correct in saying, why can't we have a shortened document so people can understand? That's one of the standards that will come out in the end. Yep. So how can they go to the full board when they haven't seen the standards themselves? Inappropriate. It's still a work in progress. Why can't they finish their document first?
That's why the board should not be even holding a meeting to vote on this, because we don't have a complete document with a table of contents that covers K-12, so you can see all the developmental progressions from K to 12. That's why you want to see a complete document.
I agree.
I've never seen it. It isn't done yet, so there should not be a vote on it, because it's not a complete document.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor.